of our Times Talks. It's called #Black Lives Matter, and it's going to be presented by Amber White. She's a coordinator of diversity affairs in the CSI office, and Denesha Jones, who is a graduate assistant for the Memorial Union. They're going to give you an excellent talk today, and we really want to encourage your guys' participation. This is a time for us to talk about these issues, and so we really there's some questions that sort of can guide you on things that you might want to ask or sort of steer you in some directions, but we just want you guys to participate in this as much as you can. Thank you so much, and I'll give it over to them.
So thank you. So like Vivian said, I'm Amber White. I'm coordinator of diversity affairs in the Center for Student Involvement.
And I'm Denesha Jones. I'm a graduate assistant / building manager for the Memorial Union.
And so we definitely want this to be more of a conversation. Yes, there are points that we're going to be making, but if at any time you feel like you want to ask us something or let's talk about one specific point right now, feel free.
Okay.
All right, let's get started.
Why Black Lives Matter? I think it's obvious that all lives matter, and that it's interesting that now this topic has been brought up so many times because of current events within the media and in today's society, as well as past events that's happened. But I'll share my personal belief of why Black Lives Matter. For me, growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, in my specific area where I lived, I was one of the darker children, so for me, my personal experiences were, because you are so dark, you're not as beautiful, you're not as smart, you're not as valuable as people lighter than you or your peers. And within my community, I had the same experiences. Being the darker child, it's more of you have to prove yourself to be worthy and prove that you do matter and you're just as capable as other people around you. So I feel people shouldn't have to have this feeling. They should never have to feel that because you are darker, because you're lighter, you're better than another person. All people should matter. All people's experiences should matter. No one should feel less than they are.
So this is a quote that was actually a status of one of my friends. Someone took it, made it a poster, and now it's actually trending. If you Google search it, this comes up. So yes, all lives matter, but we're focusing on Black ones right now, okay? Because it's very apparent that our judicial system doesn't know that. Plus, if you can't see why we're exclaiming #Black Lives Matter, you're a part of the problem. So our next couple of points are going to be a little bit more justice system focused.
Yes. So if anyone at any point want to say anything, like now, if you would like to share why you feel Black Lives Matter or all lives matter, please feel free to share. Okay. From these facts, it ties back into the last slide, and it just shows the inequalities and disparities between different races based on crimes that have been committed. As you see, for white men, 1 in every 17. Black men, 1 in every 3. Latino, 1 in every 6. You may think it's, oh, they must have committed more heinous crimes, but not necessarily. Each of these people could still commit the same crime and still get more time than a white person would. So if you just think of the inequalities within the imprisonment and all the different crimes that people commit, there's still issues that we need to face of why certain people are being criminalized and targeted to be arrested. And it's the same with women. 1 in 45, 1 in 18, 1 in 111. All these women are being targeted. All of these women are being criminalized. But why? Shouldn't their lives matter? Shouldn't the issues that a lot of people face be talked about and not just swept under the rug?
One of the handouts is a criminal justice fact sheet that was done by the NAACP, and so some of the points that I would like to highlight are as follows. Today, the U.S. is 5% of the world population and has 25% of the world prisoners. Combining the number of people in prison and jail with those under parole or probation supervision, 1 in every 31 adults, or 3.2% of the population, is under some form of correctional control. African Americans now constitute nearly 1 million of the 2.3 million incarcerated population. African Americans are incarcerated at nearly 6 times the rate of whites. Together, African American and Hispanics comprised of 58% of all prisoners in 2008, even though African Americans and Hispanics make up approximately 1/4 of the US population. 5 times as many whites are using drugs as African Americans, yet African Americans are sent to prison for drug offenses at 10 times the rate of whites. African Americans serve virtually as much time in prison for a drug offense, which is 58.7 months, as whites do for a violent offense, which is 61.7 months. And also, about $70 billion are spent on corrections yearly. So let's put that into a little bit of a perspective. Our education in Kansas got cut. FHSU specifically is about to take a cut of $680,000+ for next year, but we're still spending millions upon millions of dollars on our justice system, our correction system. That's an issue when we're putting more money into that than the futures of the people.
I just want to interject here that, and if you look at the statistics of incarcerated individuals in terms of literacy rates, there's a correlation. So if that money were spent up front in education, there would probably be a much less likely chance that out of desperation, certain individuals would turn to crime. They would be on a path that's a more solid path. So why not put the money into education instead of prisons?
That brings us to our next slide. W.E.B. Du Bois. A system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect. With the education system, like we just said, if people don't have the resources and the opportunities to succeed or even be on the same level as those who are privileged or who have the opportunity to succeed, how can they make it? I mean, I know a lot of people say, yes, even if you are from lower class families, you still have that opportunity to succeed. You still can be the outlier of all the other people who couldn't succeed, but you're just an outlier. You don't have the same opportunity. You can't fight privilege with poverty and assume that this person, 1 person out of a million, or as many people there are, is going to succeed because they had to fight 10 times harder to deal with the inequalities that other people don't have to experience.
We're speaking about meritocracy, and so this concept of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is interesting, because if I've never seen boots, never seen them, how do I pull myself up by their straps? I've never seen them, I don't own them, I don't know what this is. But I'm supposed to be at the exact same level because we're all afforded the same opportunities. So this system that's supposed to protect us sometimes does fail, but their lives matter regardless. Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Jordan Davis, Tarika Wilson, John Crawford III, Eric Garner, Oscar Grant, and Mike Brown. Their lives matter. These are just names that you happen to hear of in the last few months or years. But what about all of those stories that never make national news? A few months ago in my hometown, one of my really close friends, her cousin, lost his life because he broke up a fight. And the person who he broke up the fight with got upset, came back, and sprayed, shot up his place of work, and now he's dead. There were 7 people injured, but he's the only one who was the fatality. Over a fight.
Also, a lot of people, as I said before, I am from St. Louis. When I look at the picture of Mike Brown in the same robe that I graduated in, holding the same diploma I held since I did graduate from Normandy High School, it hurts and it hit hard, really hard. Knowing that he lived in the same community, the same area that my niece lived in, and she could have been hurt. I have brothers from St. Louis. I have family in St. Louis. Just knowing that because of the racial bias that so many people have, Just because other people feel like certain people's lives doesn't matter, this could be anyone. Anyone. But people don't realize because they're looking from a different perspective. They're not looking at, this could be me. They're looking at, oh, he's black, maybe he deserved it. Oh, this is another person of color, maybe they did something. But not seeing it as, this could have been me, this could have been someone that I was close to. Just looking at things from different people's perspectives and understanding that this could happen is what we want people to see. This could be you. Just imagine me being in Hayes, America, and actually knowing someone who was victimized and seeing the results of how it affected so many different people, while other people look at it and say, well, maybe he did something. But you don't know what happened. You don't know. You just can't say just because someone may have did something, they deserve to die. Everyone deserves to live. Everyone deserves that opportunity to succeed. You can't just take that away from someone just because you feel that they may have done something. Because if you put yourself in the same perspective, someone can say the same thing about you.
Anyone is literally one bullet away from being a hashtag. What happens when you stop trending? Lynch mobs are a thing of the past. We live in a post-racial society, right? There's nobody walking around with torches and pitchforks, and you don't see nooses hanging from trees. Or did it just evolve because a noose now isn't comprised of rope but 140 characters or less on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Fade, because that's now a thing. They look like backhanded compliments and comments like, you sound white. You act this way, you talk this way, it's called a microaggression, but you're being too sensitive if you respond. So you have to sit back and just brush stuff off. It's not that big of a deal. But what happens when it's happening to you day in and day out? And because it's not somebody hanging you from a tree, somebody lighting crosses on your lawn, nobody is acknowledging what you're happening to you, what your experience is. I mentioned Fade. I took screenshots of these last week. Why did the black guy freak out while having diarrhea? He thought he was melting. If you don't know how Fade works or you've never heard of it, it's essentially supposed to be anonymous posting. You can post pictures and things like this. If somebody ups the post, that's the longer it gets to stay in existence. If you down the post, it takes some time off of it.
But this is happening here.
This is happening on this campus. Yes, ma'am.
I can say firsthand I've dealt with, not necessarily things to that extent, but the same things. And I mean just going out on the weekend, like going to meet people, going to a party. And I met this guy, like, you know, house party. People were drinking, of course. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, oh, what's up, my N-word?
You don't even know who he is?
I don't know him. He does not know me, because if he did,
I would just say, well, obviously not your intellect. That's not what's up.
I just think it's crazy that, I don't know, I feel like it's such a small community. You think that there's kind of like that close-knit, everyone respect everyone, like, the stuff like that still happens.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that.
A lot of people don't recognize because they don't see it themselves that it actually is still happening. People post this. They don't care who sees how they feel, what they say. They do it because this is how they feel and because they feel they're being funny and no one is getting hurt. So there are actually people who still feel this way, like literally.
And the anonymous sites have really helped them get their message out.
And one of the comments on here is racism isn't a bad thing. It's part of a lot of people's culture. When I read that, I immediately thought of all the different things that people actually think. People assume that there has to be a lower class in order for our society to structure as one and to function. That's not the case. If you allow other people to succeed, you're not going to be harmed. You're not. everyone needs to be successful. That's how you create a structure. That's how you create the opportunity for other people to succeed and for there to be more opportunities and resources. You don't have to worry about, oh, this person doesn't have any money, so I'm just going to keep them below me. I'm going to make sure that they keep suffering. If you allow them the opportunities to succeed and provide them with those resources, you don't have to worry about taking care of anybody else.
We live in a post-racial society though, right? So on the flip side, social media does have its positives, and so I'm going to attempt to click through some of this. See what happens. Sorry. Pay no attention to D'Angelo. So there are some positive things that happen on social media, like you can get the word out faster. Like in the case of Eric Garner, had somebody not recorded and put it on social media, would we have really known about his story?
Can you tell me that story, because I don't know it?
Eric Garner was allegedly selling single cigarettes outside somewhere. I think it was outside of some public place on the sidewalk, and he was there originally and he broke up a fight, and the police came, and he had been like, he'd had, I don't want to call them altercations, he's had incidents or occurrences with the police in the past, and he flat out said, like, y'all, every time I'm out here, y'all are always bothering me, or like, just leave me alone, I'm minding my business, just leave me alone. And it took like 6 people, and they put him in a chokehold, which is illegal, and he was saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, and he died. They never stopped until he stopped moving.
Which is not easy to do, I'm assuming.
The thing about a chokehold is, I'm into martial arts, it cuts off the blood first. And I've choked someone out on accident before, like, you feel them go limp. Like that, if you get to the point where you're choking them out, like that's wrong. That's so many levels of wrong.
And they had to know.
They would have felt him go limp.
Yeah.
And know he's out.
Well, also, I think after you get killed like that, it's very likely you could be resuscitated, and there was no effort to try and resuscitate him.
There's multiple videos of that on YouTube, because
People just standing by? Or?
People that were trying to get involved with it, like the altercation itself between the police officer and him, were like instructed to be like, get back and stuff like that. There's a lady reporting from inside a shop, I think it's a nail salon, and she's like, he's dead, he's laying there, and like, they didn't touch him at all. There were no efforts to like resuscitate him.
There were more police officers than
yeah.
like people. That's how it looked to me when I was.
And as far as I know, the only person that has been tried in that case is the guy that recorded the video.
It is. That is very true. He is the only person to be tried, arrested, and I think he did spend some time in jail.
Yeah.
Because he recorded it. But we're supposed to have police cameras now. He showed you exactly what it would look like if they had cameras, but he went to jail for it.
So it shows that the cameras wouldn't make a difference. It has to be attitude.
So social media does have its positives, like it's a different way. Like when there were marches and protests and die-ins, like they're all over social media, so you can see what's happening and know that there are efforts being made, not even just across the nation, but across the globe in this effort for Black Lives Matter.
Would you agree that social media is like the new version of the sit-in?
We'll talk about that. Because I have mixed emotions about it as a person. So we talked about history not, that's in the past. Nobody's hanging from trees. This was last week in the Dominican Republic. A Haitian man was hung, and it was racially motivated. Denesha happened to be sitting in my office while I was scrolling through Facebook, and one of my friends had posted the video, like somebody recorded it, and it was in this big tourist area. People were just walking past like nothing was happening. And I had the thing about social media is I have the privilege of saying I don't want to be affected by this right now, so I kept scrolling because I can't fathom or how I would going to get through the rest of my day watching somebody just hang from a tree and still have to talk to students and go to my meetings and be okay.
It's crazy because this isn't even the only time that this has happened recently. within the news, within Facebook, all these different media sites, shows, even in universities, people being hung while people keep on with their day, walking past. Like she said, we have the privilege to know what we want to know to a certain extent. You can scroll past whatever you don't want to see. This image is always going to be in my mind because when I was on Facebook, we saw it. We watched it for a little, and then we had that privilege to just say, this is enough. But when is enough enough? Like, if you see it on social media, what else are you supposed to do? Just comment? That's what social media is giving you the privilege to do. Just write and say, this is how I feel, but I'm not going to make any other actions about it. But you do have the option to share, but what is your share doing? So later on, we will talk about the role that social media plays in a lot of different things. Nelly, we talked about Michael Brown a little bit, and because he is from St. Louis, a lot of people felt that he should have voiced his opinion a lot more. He should have had a more active role in everything that was happening because he's from St. Louis. But no one knows the extent into which he went with the family or with other people. Just because you don't speak about it publicly saying, this is how I feel about this situation, doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't do anything. So that's one of the things I thought was interesting or important for other people to realize. Not only celebrities, but other people. There's been plenty of times where I was the only black person in the class, and I felt that because I was the only black person in the class, I had to speak up about certain situations. But should that be required? Just because you are a celebrity, should you have to say something? Just because you are the only representative, should you have to say something? Anybody? Good question.
I think it's a good question. I felt like I dealt with it before too. So I was taking a social justice class at the beginning of last semester when all this was like, really happening. And I feel like a lot of people, especially in social justice, because that's just kind of the major that's like, not to talk down anyone's major, but like that's a major that I feel like doesn't always understand both sides. They're like, oh, the law says this. And I felt like, for me, I felt like I should speak up. But then it's really easy that you're the only one that's speaking up for this side, and there's about 20 other people like, you're wrong.
I think white celebrities have more of an, because it kind of sounds a little self-serving when black celebrities do it, but if white celebrities come out and say things against it, then it really means something. So I think white celebrities probably have a more of an obligation to speak up when things like that happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has an obligation to speak out for what they think is right or wrong. I mean, if you're in a group and someone's making a racist joke, I think, and if you think that you don't like it, you shouldn't just sit there and smile weakly or I think you should speak up. You don't have to be belligerent, but I think you can speak up and say, I think we're in college now, and we've moved beyond that kind of ignorance. Okay, that was a slam. I don't know how to say it. There's probably no nice way to say stop being a racist. But
you can say that comment makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right, that comment makes me feel uncomfortable. I like that, and I mean, and I think if you have a position that could exert some influence, then I think you should use it. Whether that's a celebrity position or I can remember when I very first started out teaching many decades ago, and and I can remember walking into class and there was a kid telling a racist joke, and I said, "You're in my classroom now, and there will be no jokes like that in this classroom." And I felt oh so noble, I guess, for saying it, but I think a teacher has a responsibility, and I think a celebrity does too, whether that celebrity be black or white. And I agree that a white celebrity, sad to say, might have more impact because they have no specific vested interest. In the same way, when Alan Alda, a man, speaks out about women's rights, you cheer because it's a man speaking it. So, yeah, I think there's a responsibility to speak out.
We see you in the back.
So we're on the topic of celebrities. What do you guys think of when Morgan Freeman was asked about how do we end racism? He said stop
said what?
Stop
So
talking about it.
When Morgan Freeman said the way to end racism is to stop talking about it, what do we think about that?
How did you want to go first?
I feel you can't solve a problem by not addressing that there is a problem. If you say that there is still racism in the United States and all over the world, why would you sit there and ignore it? It's going to continue, and it's going to get worse because you're ignoring that there is a problem.
I could ignore the man in the tree. That doesn't mean it's going to stop happening.
I think that it's important to talk about it, but from the perspective of, yes, there are issues. Now let's look at where they really started. And not so much just in like slavery and things like that, but while I was in Germany, I took a class called New African World Drama. And we looked at plays such as Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And in this play, it was really interesting because it's about these African American musicians who are, you know, they're trying to make this album, they're trying to get ahead, and you have the guy who's, you know, kind of trying to suck up to the white people. You've got Ma Rainey, who is this huge star. But basically how no matter what they did, no matter how much they were pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, they were still exploited by the white people. And I think that we need to look at the problems from, okay, look, yes, we got rid of segregation and things like that.
Did we?
Well, I mean, quote unquote, we got rid of, like, their laws, right? You know, but here's what's still happening and still totally legal.
You know what's legal? Gentrification. Because an entire city can be African American and be dirt poor, and that's okay. And an entire city can be affluent and white, and that's fine too. Still segregated. Those schools are segregated. Your schools are based on your taxes. So if I live in a poor neighborhood, my not paying that many taxes, my school's going to have the same books that my grandma had, versus the latest technology, the newest books, the newest information, the best access to everything. But that's still okay. That's a problem. But we're all supposed to get into this college thing and be on the same playing field. How?
I mean, I think you do have to look at the systemic underlying reasons, and it does often go to poverty, and then you have to ask why poverty? Why this, why this poverty? And does it, I mean, I think education is a part of it. I mean, school funding, as boring as those kinds of, I just say school funding and, people shut down. It's really going to talk about school funding? But, I mean, it's an issue that makes a difference. I mean, should school funding not be based on local incomes? Should it be just divvied up fairly across the board? And how do you make those changes?
Black Lives Matter because the story needs to be told, and it's Black History Month. In K through 12, you're super lucky if you learn about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and maybe you'll learn about Malcolm X. But the stories that you're being told are romanticized because Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King are painted out to be somewhat submissive and very non-aggressive. They believe in civil disobedience, but their whole stories aren't being told because they've done some pretty extremely radical things, but you don't learn about that in school. And the only thing you've ever learned about MLK is that he said that to do things by any means necessary, and that meant violence. But what stories have you ever heard about him actually being violent?
I didn't know the one where he professed to support violence. That's what I didn't know about. He did?
Not by any means necessary. So if it came, like if somebody puts their hands on you, you have the right to defend yourself type stuff, but not just go out and take over type stuff.
So it's just the images that people portray in order to make you feel just any type of way about a situation. A lot of people didn't know there were a lot of people before Rosa Parks who did sit-ins or sat on the bus and decided not to move. A lot of people didn't know anything about these individuals, but they do decide what they want other people to see. They want you to see that you're not supposed to fight back. You're not supposed to be that aggressive. You can be aggressive as long as you're not offending anyone else. And when you do offend other people, as with these two individuals, they were assassinated.
They were met with violence, regardless.
But even when they were being submissive and not being necessarily violent, they were being treated violently. But no one necessarily said, oh, they're fighting violence with peace. It's peace against violence. No one thought of that. Although Malcolm X maybe did have some guns, he's never used them. You've never heard of him actually putting force on other people, but he was being treated harshly. And as he said, if you're treated violently, you're expected to protect yourself because no one else is going to protect you. If the system wasn't created for you, you're going to fail. So he had to do what he felt was necessary for himself to succeed and other people around him.
And I think you need to know about Rosa Parks, that she wasn't just some little lady who finally, she'd been involved in social action for a long time leading up to this point. So I think social action is important, and it's by being involved in social action that the opportunities ultimately come to you, or that you ultimately have the courage to do something that can make a change.
And they also specifically chose Rosa Parks. I mean, they were planning this. They were like, well, she is someone who's highly respected in the community. She was a school teacher. So they knew that someone like her, that would be a bigger statement than, who knows.
So for all the other people who didn't have those resources or opportunities, they were just expected to suffer until someone decided to step up.
So what about all these stories that you might not know? Like Bayard Rustin, Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, the Freedom Riders, Daisy Bates and the Little Rock Nine, Huey Newton, Betty Shabazz, James Farmer, Dorothy Height, Medgar and Merle Evers Williams. Do y'all know any of those people? Some of y'all are shaking your heads yes, and that makes me happy. But there are lots of people who you will never learn about until you take the initiative either on your own or until you get to college, maybe, to learn who these people are at all. But their lives still matter. The work that they put in matters so, so much. So, race relations are not just black and white. In the black community, we treat each other as if we're separate races because there's this ridiculous thing called team light skin, team dark skin. It frustrates me to the point where I'm just like, I don't even know where to begin to articulate how ridiculous this is.
Yes, Marie. I remember the first time I started hearing about the whole team light skin, team dark skin thing. Okay, one time before that. The Tom Joyner morning show?
Yeah.
He used to do this thing, I don't remember what day it was, but I feel like it was like every Wednesday or Friday, where they would do like a paper bag test to decide if you were black enough. And he would literally have people come on his show and have a brown paper sack. And if you were darker than the paper sack, you were black. If you were lighter than it, you weren't really black. Which, I don't know that he was trying to be funny with it, which I think it was a funny thing. That's not funny. And then I also feel like he was also illustrating the fact that once you're lighter, there's certain issues you don't have to deal with. And if you're darker, there's certain issues you do deal with.
And brown paper bag test is real. They used to happen a long time ago.
I mean, for real, or was he like trying to satirize?
I want to believe he's trying to satirize, but that's me wanting to believe and not actually knowing what he's doing. Because there's the one, you guys have ever heard of the one drop rule? 1 drop of black blood and you're black. Our president.
That's everybody.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it is. Pretty sure it is. And it wasn't until I read Fried Green Tomatoes that I, being a white person, I didn't even know about that. That reality until I read Fried Green Tomatoes.
Team light skin. I'm sorry. Team light skin and team dark skin also kind of stems back from slavery because if you were lighter, you got to be in the house. If you were darker, you were out in the field, and they treated you a different kind of a way, and to a point where it created this tension within the plantation.
Started a slave.
But they're all slaves. Y'all are all on the struggle bus, but you're mad at each other based on how you're being treated and the preferential treatment that one group is receiving over the other.
It's still bad treatment.
You're still a
I
slave.
want to get your bad treatment, not my bad treatment.
I find it interesting because USA keep out, I can't quite read everything
I can't
with my
either.
eyes from here, but in one of my classes right now, there's people are writing some blogs, and one woman, I believe it's a woman, was discussing how in her community, Somali immigrants are being rejected by the African American or black population, and it's like it doesn't stop. You know, we have such, and we as human beings, I guess, have to somehow delineate between each other, and I don't understand why so much, but it happens.
Well, I always, I mean, I have recently, it does seem like that racism is moving more toward culture than your black skin. I mean, just the fact that Barack Obama could be elected president because he's culturally similar to white people, and that's why they embraced him, and that's why someone like Jesse Jackson could never be elected president, because he's not seen. That white people are more accepting of black people that are culturally similar to themselves.
Yeah.
And it's the people that are culturally different are the ones they're suspicious of, and the ones that they're more prejudiced toward, I think. And that's the reason why segregation works so well. Because when you have residential segregation, you can have cultural segregation. It makes it very easy to send the black kids to the less supported school. And that, I mean, that was really what the court in Kansas said was obvious, was that some schools get a whole lot more resources than others, and that's what they said was the big injustice. And that's what they're talking about. It's the minority and the poor schools. Of course, minorities fall disproportionately in the poor, so that anything that affects poor people is going to disproportionately affect them. But I think the key is cultural integration, and I think that's why, you know, classes like, what am I trying to think?
Diversity in the U.S.?
Diversity. Is it diversity?
It used to be called multiculturalism.
Multiculturalism, yeah.
It's not called that anymore.
That's so
Diversity in the
important.
U.S.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I kind of see that as the key, is we need cultural integration, and that's what's going to facilitate understanding and acceptance of de facto desegregation. Because you're right, we don't have de jure desegregation, but we have de facto segregation because largely of poverty differences.
Well, I've had a lot of experiences in Germany, so I always draw from them. But in Germany, Turkish people are kind of looked down upon. There's a lot of immigrants from Turkey, and one of my friends said that she'll have people say to her, you know, why can't other Turkish people be like you? And she's like, and I'm sure that some of you have gotten that before, but I think that sometimes we look at, okay, there's the white way, there's the mainstream way and everything, and that's what you should be, and if you're an African American and you fit into that mold, then, you know, great, awesome, you're just like me. But then there's like the other the stereotypical African American way of life, and people look at it and they're like, it's different. It's different.
That's what they're saying.
And
so
I
why
think
can't
that we
you
need
be
to
culturally?
show.
Why can't everybody, all of you, be culturally similar
I
to
think
me?
that we need to show that there is beauty in that culture. And I mean, yeah, from that.
And advantages.
Yes,
I mean,
there's advantages.
In terms of human.
There's reasons why they are the way they are, and there's so much strength in that. And yeah, I think that it's important to look at it that way.
If I could speak to that really quick, something that I noticed when you try and like bring up subjects like this in like different settings, like this is obviously a setting for discussion, and I'm very pleased with how we're going. Thank you so much for your participation. But I noticed that a lot of times when you try and talk about these things, people will say, "Well, I'm not racist. You just have to like act a particular way. You just have to be cool." And when they say cool, they mean I need you to be like me. They need you to like assimilate with their particular culture. I think that one of like the biggest problems that we face in like our society is that we have that kind of like segregation based on culture. And when you say like the like white mainstream culture. Like I know what you mean, but that's how everybody sees it. They see like this as an outlier and these things as not as meaningful or like as respected because they're not the mainstream. And so I think what we need to do is try and like, I mean, normalize, never assume that a person will behave a certain way because of like something. You need to normalize this idea that all cultures are respectable. Like this, Judeo-Christian, like Anglo-Saxon white culture that we have is just as respectable as any other culture, as like a Hispanic culture, as like a black culture. And we need to normalize that idea before we can, like, before people can sit around and say, well, I'm not racist.
I think, sorry, tying off of that, I wrote a research paper last semester and I was like, why can't we all be American Americans? We have African Americans, we have Hispanic Americans, you know, we have like all these different types of Americans, but why can't we all just be Americans? I know for me, I visited Europe 2 years ago and we went all over, and no matter where we went, people would be like, what part of Africa are you from? And I'm like, no, really, I'm from America. And I just think it's funny that there's no like set, like, you are an American. I feel like that's another kind of like...
We have to stop being scared of what's different, because that's kind of where it stems from. If it's different, I don't know this, be like me, or I can't be with you, you know? So I think that's a big thing, because a lot of people are scared of what's different.
I just want to say, I'm mixed. I'm like a Oreo. And sometimes it's like really hard just to fit in one spot, because either you're not white or you're not full Mexican. You know, so it makes life a little bit more challenging.
I think just keep wearing that shirt and you're good.
I love your shirt. And even from my perspective, it's like, why should you have to choose?
Yeah.
Can't you just be a person?
Thank you. Within our society, it's just so difficult for people to understand you are who you are. We need labels to understand people and try to identify people just so we can put a finger on who are you, instead of just allowing people to be free to be themselves and saying, well, this is what I want to identify as. This is who I am. But our society isn't like that. Yes, sir.
You know, I think we're all beautiful in the way we are. Blue eyes, black eyes. I mean, look at the people in this room. The one with the yellow shirt. You. I mean, our lips, these guys' eyes. I mean, we are amazing in the way we are, and we're fascinating. But I'm so fed up of hate.
Yeah.
Honestly, it just irks me. You know, in Dr. Duffy, I had a class with her, and it was the first thing you walk in the room, and she said, you make a comment like that again, you get out of my room. She said, I'm a witness. But I tell you the truth, just like he said, I'm just fed up of segregation in all levels. Why? Because I'm bold, because I got an accent. Everybody thinks I'm black and I'm cool. As soon as I start talking, then they're like, okay.
Well, we got to put
brown
you in another box.
Yeah, that's another bag. Right? You know, but then I speak Spanish, so I'm cool with Mexicans, right? And then it goes on and on. It's just the hate. We're in Kansas. I think that just a week ago there was what's the name of the governor?
Brownback.
Yeah, and
You cannot be named.
and, you know, and we all reacted about that. But then what happened? I think that there's a position for all to embrace who we are and not to be afraid of doing it. I don't believe in violence, but sometimes a lot of, if I may say, white people feel uncomfortable because they can say the word, but it's okay for a black person to say it. I mean, I think everybody has the right to express how what they have in their mind without being beat up by a cluster of brothers because somebody say the N-word. I know that history has been horrible. And you know, our founders and all the people behind us have a terrible things that they can speak of only they know what they've been through. But when is hate gonna stop? You know, Olaf over there. I mean, he's an amazing beautiful black guy right there. But as soon as he's from Nigeria, you know, and he got an accent, and we all try to blend. But when is the hate gonna stop? What are we gonna do about it?
I think when people get educated, I really do. I think a lot of it does hinge on education, and there's ignorance out there. I mean, I had a student write a paper once where he said, I don't see what the big deal is with the word nigger. You know, it's just a word. And so I walked into the next class period, and I promise I did this. I walked in and I went, and they're all. And I said, it's just a finger. I don't get it. It's just a finger. So don't tell me it's just a word if you know that this is not just a finger, right? You know?
Okay, I have a question. You were talking about the diversity in the U.S. class, multicultural class. Are those required classes?
It's only required for certain
majors. It's required, like education majors have to take it. And it also counts in 2 different columns on the gen ed, so you can count it as humanities.
I feel like if we're going to say that education is a thing that needs to change and we have to educate ourselves more to get rid of this hate, get rid of this ignorance, if it's still an option, I feel like that's a class that should be required for all. Just to enlighten you. So you, like, because right now I feel like people are like, well, I don't have to take it. And a lot of people like that choose that mentality or choosing to be ignorant as well. Because a lot of people are very comfortable in their ignorance and like, okay.
Because it is comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
It's uncomfortable
to step outside of that.
Yeah.
And to talk about things, you know, I mean, it's not comfortable.
And politicians do use racism. I mean, if you live around here, you know, or if you live in the right neighborhood, you got these flyers that show Barack Obama superimposed on the Democratic candidate, and the theme of the mailer will be, you know, a vote for this white guy is a vote for this black president. And so, and you could argue that that's why the Republican Party is so successful, because they are drawing on racist attitudes of Kansans, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so racism, they have no motive to eliminate racism in that situation.
I've taken the diversity class on campus, and in that class I don't feel like they touched upon this issue very much, but I've taken the civic engagement class, or civic leadership class, with Kurt Brungart, and we really talked about like different movements, and especially this one, where we talked about John Lewis, Rosa Parks, Diane Nash, and like the power that those people had. And I was just so surprised by like that diversity class where they didn't touch upon those. But the civic engagement class was the first time I've ever heard of those names, and it was so powerful, like the stories and like what they did, and especially like for this movement and like the torture they went through. So again, like education, but like the right education, and like talking about those people and giving like those heroic stories. Like I think that's so powerful, and it's so important for students to be able to hear that. And I know a couple of people have had that class, and I think a couple of people here have had that class and would agree with that. But it's just sad that not all students get to go to that class and hear what you had to say about it. So
I wanted to make a comment on what the gentleman over there said earlier. He mentioned about blending, and I'm thinking to myself, why do people have to blend? Why can't they just be who they are? It's like that just struck me wrong. Why does this gentleman from Nigeria have to blend? You know, to be accepted.
That's something I thought about when I was writing that paper, because I was like,
I just said viva la difference.
I was trying to think of like how I was trying to, when I was writing the paper, I really struggled too, because who decided that this was normal? Who decided like this was the cultural acceptable norm? If you're this, you're okay. But if you're this, we're gonna look at you funny. If you're really this, we're not gonna do anything with you.
I think the most important thing for everyone to do is not try to find the difference in people, but embrace the differences of each person. Everybody's going to have something different about them. Every black person isn't the same, every white person isn't the same, every Hispanic person isn't the same. So why pick apart who each person is to try to find a difference, to find something negative, but use those differences to see why each person is beautiful. Like you said, every person is beautiful. Other people's eyes may be more beautiful than yours, whatever. Don't allow the differences to separate you more, but connect you and try to make a difference. One of my favorite quotes is, you have to be the change you wish to see. If you want to see a change, you have to start with yourself, and then the people you surround yourself with, and so on and so on. You can't just say, oh, well, I don't like this, and do nothing about it. You have to say, I don't like this, and this is what I'm going to do to change this, or try to change this. So just embracing each other and trying to use the changes and differences to evolve our society.
Respect and appreciate. The other picture that's on here is because when you hear about immigration and being talked about in the media, it all just sounds like it's coming from one place, but it's not. There are quite a few undocumented people that come from Canada, but nobody's complaining about them. I wonder why that is.
They passed the paper bag test.
They passed the paper bag.
One of the questions on the papers is, how do you separate a culture from a people? One of the things we also talked about within the discussion was how so many different people take the culture away from other people's identity, and how we just don't embrace people's identity and their culture. I think it's important to say, yes, this is a part of this person's identity and their culture, and I respect that and I appreciate that. And if you want to take a part of their culture, say that. And we're going to talk about that in the next slides, because a lot of people don't give credit to people who took a lot of their life to create the identity that so many people are famous for. A few of these pictures are music, art, and food. A lot of people got famous off a lot of different people. There are a lot of African American people, or black people, I should say, who did a lot of famous things, created music, created dances, created identity for themselves in order to become more successful. But their identity was stolen from them by a lot of different other people, and they were not recognized, but their culture was taken from them and created into something else.
There's a fine line between appreciation and appropriation. Iggy Azalea.
How did you know?
I was thinking.
She's from Australia, but you don't ever hear that accent until she does an interview. Why is it that she has to sound differently when she's doing, according to her, what she loves and appreciates? Nothing that she's doing can remotely be seen as racist because she loves the culture and she has a black boyfriend. Miley Cyrus.
Miley.
She just needs help.
Yeah. So her costume on the, I guess it's the left. Right. There we go. On this side.
Her pink costume.
Yes, she was Little Kim for Halloween. So this is like one of those borderline things. Like, I'm super appreciative that she didn't go in blackface like a lot of people did. But come on now. Or and for her latest, maybe not her latest album because I don't know when it came out because I'm not a fan.
It's a while ago.
She was quoted saying that she wanted a more black sound for her CD. She didn't reference any specific artist that she wanted to sound like or things that she was trying to get across. She just wanted to sound black.
As though that is one sound.
It is one sound.
Maybe more aggressive. Maybe a little aggressive.
Maybe.
I think that is strength.
I know that she made a song about tennis shoes. They're Jordans. Yeah, that. Katy Perry loves cultural
She's like
appropriation.
the queen of appropriation.
Loves appropriation.
It's difficult to say that, yes, you can appreciate someone's culture as long as you make sure that you allow other people to know this is where you're getting it from. You can't steal someone's identity and then say, it's mine, it's me, it's who I am. Because it's not who you are, it's who someone else is, and it's the fight that it took so many people to get and create their own identity that you're stealing. And even when we look at these pictures, as you said before, sir, I do not know your name, but you said that a lot of people within the celebrities who need to speak up, they don't. These are the people who are taking the culture away from so many different people, but they're not even addressing the issues that all of these people are experiencing. But you want to identify as them. You want to be who they are and take a lot of their culture, but not recognize the culture and all the issues that they're facing. But you have that power.
Deal with the prejudice.
And not deal with any of that.
That was something they had brought up with Iggy Azalea. I don't remember what it was, but it was like a big thing on Twitter. Where like they were like calling her out for wanting to be down and be black when it was convenient for her, but she didn't address anything with like the Michael Brown shooting or a lot of stuff that's been going on.
Well, she outright said, I really don't care about the social issues that like made rap and hip hop come about. Like she's like, I don't care about that history.
Yeah. I just want to lose money.
That guy is crazy.
I don't know who Rick Rapp is.
I was just going to say, I think I'm glad that I'm culturally unaware of this character.
Okay, so I thought of him when I thought of culture because of the grills, the chains, the braids is what a lot of people expect to see from rappers. Usually when you think of rappers, you think of black people. But what I noticed was the MTV on his neck and the BET on his chest. This is not his idea of what black people are supposed to be, but what he's seen black people to be. This is the image that's been portrayed to so many different people of how hip-hop is supposed to look, what you're supposed to identify as, because this is what's culturally normal for people to see.
But if we're going to talk about people just being people, I mean, do I have to choose a look that is, you know, white middle-aged college professor? This is it. But I mean, so if I did dress differently, I mean, would I be? I mean, that is a question of appreciation or appropriation, or you know, does my identity?
What if he
is my identity dictated by the fact that I'm?
What if he identified more with like the black people?
By the fact
From
of
my
others,
perspective,
or
it's just
creating
like,
your own.
Yeah.
like
It
your
does.
Your own identity.
reasoning. What is your reasoning?
I'm an ex-military, and it's so different once you have the uniform on, and when you have the uniform off. People don't give a crap who you are.
Good save.
You know? And it's like, wow, really? I have to have this on to get that much respect? Seriously? So people are just, they will judge you no matter what, you know?
So it's just a question of, is he doing it because this is who he feels he is? Or is it the influences of MTV and BET and all the negative images that are shown on those shows? Because we all know that if you look on any of those shows, all the stereotypes that shows African American, black people, Hispanic people, any person of color is negative.
I think maybe one of the defining factors between appreciation and appropriation is, are you exploiting someone else's culture? Like with Katy Perry, oh my gosh, I mean, she's making a cartoon of it. There's real exploitation with that.
Are you profiting from it?
Like, is it for show, or is it because it's something that connects with you?
Yeah.
Yes.
With this like idea of appropriation, like I grew up in Western Kansas, and I have a couple brothers and sisters. And I have a brother who's a cowboy, and people are so surprised when they see my brother. If I like take him somewhere and he's like in a suit, they assume that his favorite, they automatically assume, you know, he's into rap music and he likes all this stuff. My brother is a cowboy, and he is like, he fishes like every other day. Like it's stupid how much he fishes. And like that's just where we grew up. That's like our identity, and the people that my brother was around, and the people that he hangs out with, and those are his friends. Those are like that's his culture. Like we didn't.
He didn't appropriate cowboy.
He didn't appropriate cowboy. We grew up with cowboys, so like that makes sense. So like I understand. Like if you grew up in if you adopt the culture of your like residential area or where you are, that's one thing. But for like celebrities to be doing things like this, that's like that's obviously profiteering from like the struggles of like an entire people. If you grow up in like Cowboy Town, you're gonna have the problems that Cowboy Town does. If you are white and you grow up in an area like where like it's majorly minority and you have these high stress, high poverty areas where like crime and stuff is so rampant, you're going to see that, and you're still going to have those problems. That's not appropriation. That's you accepting and identifying with something that is so close to you that like shapes who you are. So like I think that's offensive on any level for people who are in like the media and like to like take those struggles and to do something bad with them. So I think it's about like where you're growing up and what you're seeing, and then what you find and what you really truly love. I think there's a definite line between appropriation and appreciation. I think it's a little bit easier for us to see than if we just think about it for a second.
So while Black Lives Matter to me, I could talk forever and ever and never scratch the surface. But my short answer is that no one walking this earth's surface has the right to decide that they don't matter.
Yeah.
So these are just a few of the names that we should never forget. And I know that it's after 1 o'clock, but if y'all want to stay and talk about some of the discussion questions, we are here for you.
My 1:30 class would be so sad.
But we really appreciate the conversation that we had. Was really wonderful. Thank you guys for being here. And we'll see you guys again next time.
Thank you.